Hello. I'm United States presidential scholar Milton Perez, and I have here my official ballot for the California general election. I'm going to be going through it with you item by item. I've filled out the ballot in its entirety with the exception of the Los Angeles Community College Board of Trustees appointments, with the exception of one, which I'll go through with you. And this is just a guide. This is just a California general election personal guide from me to you, walking through the measures, walking through the candidates. This is my vision for 2020 at this point. By the way, fun fact, you only need around 600,000 signatures to get a measure on the ballot. You don't have to endorse a candidate. You can just write down the idea. And change.org this son of a Mitch. Okay, here we go. City, local, municipal election, member of the City Council, 10th District. I'm going with Grace Yu. Mark Ridley Thomas has been a career politician since the 90s. And he's had a couple of pretty egregious scandals. The one that stuck out to me the most was when he donated $100,000 from his campaign to a what eventually was a nonprofit stewarded by his son, who also was in California politics. So he donates. He's alumnus of USC, and then his son, who also works in government, winds up getting a job at USC after he resigns from government following sexual assault allegations. And then his father just finds a way to donate $100,000 from his own campaign, from contributions to his campaign. And throughout the rigmarole, USC reports it, and the money winds up after the fact in a nonprofit that's headed by Sebastian Ridley Thomas, who is his son. So this guy is Mark Ridley Thomas is the definition of establishment Democrat, and it's just kind of been status quo for the better part of 30 years. And Grace Yu's major platform is essentially homelessness, and this is for my district specifically, the 10th district, the 10th district of the city council. So this is very local. Homelessness is probably, I think most Angelenos would agree, is the #1 issue that we're facing in the country. I mean, in the area. Los Angeles, nationally is recognized as having probably the largest problem with a homeless population. Skid Row comes to mind. For those of you who don't know, Skid Row is a neighborhood, basically, a stretch of road. I think on Los Angeles Street in downtown Los Angeles, that is just completely inhabited by a homeless population. And it's been that way for decades and decades, reminiscent of the career of said Mark Ridley Thomas. So her Grace Yu's whole thing is that she's new. She's not a career politician. She has homelessness on top of her list, and she's just fresh blood in there. That's kind of the overall theme of this ballot for me, is kind of getting people promoted, just kind of washing it out, just kind of keeping the ideas fresh. I tend to not like people with established relationships. I like a clean resume, not a chain of command when it comes to freedom of speech. So that's my pick for City Council 10th District, Grace Yu. I officially endorse Grace Yu for, oops, I lost my light here somehow. So that's my pick for City Council, 10th District. Moving on, Los Angeles Community College members of the board. There's 7 seats. I'm only voting for one of the seats for a specific reason, and that is that Lydia Gutierrez is against DACA. So Lydia Gutierrez is going up for the 3rd seat on the Board of Trustees of Los Angeles Community College. And she's specifically a Trump supporter, but that's not really the reason why I'm voting against her. I'm voting against her because she opposes DACA, which, for those of you who don't know, is the Dreamer Act, which allows the children of immigrants or child immigrants to this country to be protected from deportation. So there's 70,000 DACA qualifying students in Los Angeles Community College. So instead of Lydia Gutierrez, I chose to vote for David Vela, who is a member of the Board of Trustees of the community college, and throughout his tenure, he has seen dramatic increases in attendance and graduation rates. So that is my pick, David Vela, for the 3rd seat on the Board of Trustees of the Los Angeles Community College. I support DACA. I support a path to citizenship. I'm an immigrant myself. If I had come from Mexico instead of Cuba, I'd probably be under DACA. So that is my endorsement. That is my vote for seat 3 on the Board of Trustees. On the Board of Trustees of the LACC. Moving on to member of the State Assembly, 53rd District. I'm voting for Godfrey Santos Plata. He is a renter from Koreatown, going up against Miguel Santiago, the establishment Democrat candidate, incumbent. Miguel Santiago is kind of this new progressive wave, but he's a centrist progressive. He is holding the seat right now, and just overall, you know, I've been in LA now this time for 6 years. And he's been in politics a number of those years. Godfrey Santos Plaza is a middle school teacher with no experience in politics. What he has done is organized other teachers. He's Filipino, an immigrant. Again, middle school teacher, Democrat. But he's kind of what the real, quote unquote, real progressive is, the popular progressive, not the political progressive, which we have seen through the likes of people like Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, who label themselves as progressives, but are really more centrist Democrats. So my voting for Godfrey Santos Plata goes into plays into my general idea of washing out the establishment. He's a regular person, which I believe is one of the central ideas of this country, which is that it's governed by the people. So I am a fervent opponent to the propagation of career politicians as our chosen elected officials. I think in general the legalese needs to come down, and there needs to be a broader layman's term body politic overall. I think we need to see, I think that's what we're seeing with Trump. Even though he was an accomplished businessman, his appeal to the general population, I think, was that off the cuff, even though I'm rich, I'm kind of just a regular person. Even George W. Bush, his whole thing was, who's the guy you can see yourself sitting down and having a beer with. I think that ethos has to be parlayed overall into a government that is truly of the people. That doesn't mean we don't fall under legal recourse. That doesn't mean we don't see legal counsel. It just means we have the interests of the general population as close at hand as possible. So I'm officially voting for Godfrey Santos Plaza for member of the State Assembly, 53rd District. Also a Democrat, don't be fooled. This one's exciting. United States Representative, 34th District. I'm officially voting for David Kim. He is a Korean American, which is close to my heart, being a Cuban American. I know all the I see the consulate down the street here on New Hampshire and Wilshire, and I'm very proud of them. They're always outside. There's always lines outside the consulate. There's always a protest. There's always some attention being drawn to something. They have a very active base, and I love that. Jimmy Gomez is the incumbent. He's done good work. But David Kim is running on universal basic income, which is, as an official card-carrying member of Yang 2020, shout out to the Yang gang out there, David Kim is my solid choice to represent us in Congress. He's running very strongly on a UBI platform. He has a very progressive overall platform, but most important, central to my interest is universal basic income. Whether it's health reform, a public option. Joe Biden is running on, my health plan is going to see your premiums come down, etc., etc. Whether it's health, whether it's oversight, whether it's public colleges and universities, universal basic income ticks off those boxes without the bureaucracy. It gives money directly into the hands of the people that allows them to decide what to fund. I don't need an overhaul of the health system if I can just pay for my own premium in an aggressive, competitive health insurance market. So David Kim is my strong vote for United States Representative 34th District. On the ballot, they are both Democrats, Jimmy Gomez and David Kim. So Democrat, universal basic income. We need this. Next on the ballot, Los Angeles Unified School District Measure RR. This one, let's go through it. It sounds good, but then it gets to the nitty-gritty, and it's a little duplicitous. So here we go. School upgrades and safety measure. To update, and I'm going to go through these line by line with you. To upgrade classrooms / labs / technology for 21st century learning, implement COVID-19 facility safety standards, address school facility inequities, reduce asbestos, earthquake and water quality hazards, and replace / renovate aging school classrooms, buildings. Shall Los Angeles Unified School District's measure be adopted authorizing $7 billion in bonds at legal rates, levying approximately 2 cents per $100 of assessed valuation, generating an estimated $329 million annually until approximately 2055, with independent audits, citizens oversight. This keeps turning off. Citizens oversight. Citizens oversight. No funds for administrative salaries. So this all sounds good. Clean up the schools, get the safety standards up, but then they hit you with the $7 billion in bonds. Let's borrow. Bond is an IOU. We're gonna pay for it by borrowing $7 billion, and then I'm no financial expert. I really don't know anything about finance. But 2 cents for every $100 levied. I'm assuming that's a tax on the bond, which will generate $329 million annually. I just think you couldn't find the money, and borrowing some money because you couldn't make ends meet is one thing, but $7 billion I think is way out over and ahead of anything that we really need, when it's just a blanket betterment of the school system. I think there are other ways to raise that money. I think borrowing in general should be avoided, particularly when you need a sum as high as $7 billion. I think oversight in general is built into the system. So it's called, what is your plan? We have taxes to pay for good plans. I think this is a lazy measure that kind of seeks to, there's another measure on here like this where they just throw a bunch of things together and kind of just hope to get a yes, and this gets a no from me. No on measure RR for the Los Angeles Unified School District. You just need to be more specific. Moving on. County Supervisor, 2nd District. Holly J. Mitchell is a respectable candidate, but I personally have heard, I think a lot of us have, from Herb J. Weston Jr. He's really kind of come out ahead during this whole COVID disaster. He's really kind of gotten the resources out there for the general population, making things pretty clear as to what our options are, what the pandemic unemployment assistance resources are. He's really kind of impressed me with his community outreach as a sitting member of government. This is the kind of thing you need to see. Actual engagement, not just a campaign, but rather when you're in office, actually going out and touching the people, making sure I see you. Turns out when it comes time to when it comes down to electing someone, that's valuable. So I'm voting for Herb J. Weston Jr. for Supervisor of the 2nd District of Los Angeles County. Page 3 of the ballot. This is a big one. District Attorney for LA County. George Gascon is a Havana, Cuba native. He was chief of police. He was chief of police in Mesa, Arizona, during the drama with the sheriff down there, who was randomly stopping Latinos and asking for their papers. George Gascon, as a Latino himself, a Cuban, a natural-born Cuban, went down there and opposed him as a chief of police. So that's very impressive to me. And his opponent, Jackie Lacey, what really sealed the nail on the coffin of my vote against her is that throughout her tenure, she has seen, she's the incumbent. She is the current district attorney of the county of Los Angeles. And during her tenure, she's seen hundreds of police homicides, meaning police killing members of the population, and has overseen 0 testimonies. Not one of those police officers that killed hundreds of Los Angeles citizens has had to testify, even testify in court. That's just not gonna cut it. So I'm gonna vote for the guy that went out against law enforcement as a member of law enforcement for what he disagreed with. So I'm officially endorsing voting for George Gascon for Los Angeles County District Attorney. Moving on. Judge of the Superior Court, office number 72. Both of these guys sound impressive until you kind of start to dig in. So Steve Morgan, I'm voting for Mayana. America is the land of funny names, and I think we kind of should err on the side of funny names, given other alternatives. I'm personally voting for Mayana Dellinger for Judge of the Superior Court in the 72nd office. But let me talk about her opponent, Steve Morgan, first. So Steve Morgan has held so many offices, it's tough to count. He looks like a government plant, but I'm not a conspiracy theorist. He's a member of the U.S. Army JAG Corps, and he has 18 different titles and positions, all of which kind of seem to be in conflict of interest with each other. So he was born in Baltimore, Maryland, the DMV area next door to Washington, D.C. He was an intern for a congressman in college, while he was in college, who is now a senator. He is a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army. And when you look into his resume, he holds 17 different positions. He's kind of one of these kids that just wanted to be in charge before he even really knew what he stood for. That's how his resume reads. And when paired next to Mayana Dellinger's, Mayana Dellinger graduated first in her class from the University of Oregon School of Law. She speaks 3 languages: German, Danish, and English. She translated and interpreted Holocaust survivor lawsuits against Swiss banks. She was a law clerk for 2 different superior courts, and she taught English. To master's degree students in Denmark and second language students at UC Irvine and CSU Long Beach. She has a very linear law career. Her resume is 100% focused on law. She's venturing out into public service now, but what she's running for is not politics. She's voting to oversee cases, to adjudicate cases. So this is a lawyer through and through. She doesn't have different offices like Stephen Morgan, Steve officially. Steve, thank you, Steve Morgan. I think he's kind of compromised. I think when push comes to shove, he's gonna follow whatever the U.S. Army tells him to do, and that's just not that's not what I consider to be the job of a judge of the Superior Court. I think you need as unbiased a view as possible. God bless you. I salute. Thank you for your service. Judge of the Superior Court, office number, and by the way, I support the troops. Anyway, I just said Georgia. Okay. Judge of the Superior Court, office number 162. I'm gonna vote for somebody named Andrew Yang on this ballot. God damn it. So I'm voting for Scott Andrew Yang. That is his name, Scott Andrew Yang, for Judge of the Superior Court. He's the current Deputy District Attorney for the County of Los Angeles. He's running against David D. Diamond, who, when you look the kid up, he's kind of not focused as to what he wants to do. He's focused on the law, David Diamond, but he's not very organized in his execution of his career. Personally, this is just how I see it. Scott Andrew Yang has kind of stuck to domestic violence specifically. He shows victims of domestic violence how to be advocates in various ways throughout the system. So that's one thing that impressed me about Scott, and just his resume is more streamlined. He kind of figured out what he wanted, where he wanted to lean his weight a little bit in a much more organized manner than David Diamond. Fun fact: they both are graduates of Southwestern School of Law, which is here on Wilshire Boulevard and Westmoreland. So Scott Andrew Yang for Judge of the Superior Court, he's just the more organized candidate. Moving on, County Measure J. Community investment and alternatives to incarceration, minimum county budget allocation. Shall the measure annually allocating in the county's budget no less than 10% of the county's locally generated unrestricted revenues in the general fund to address the disproportionate impact of racial injustice through community investment and alternatives to incarceration, and prohibiting using those funds for carceral systems, that means jail systems, and law enforcement agencies as detailed in the ordinance adopting the proposed charter amendment be adopted. So this basically means shall the county of Los Angeles appropriate 10% of its budget to address the disproportionate impact of racial injustice through investing in the community and alternatives to incarceration, prohibiting using that money in the jail system and law enforcement agencies. So this is basically Black Lives Matter on the ballot. I think this is a smart way to do this. 10% of the budget. Let's feel around. Let's see what we can come up with. This is very proactive to me. I'm voting yes on Measure J. State Measure 14 authorizes bonds. There's that word again. Borrowing authorizes bonds continuing stem cell research. Wait till you see how much this is. Authorizes bonds continuing stem cell research. Initiative statute. Authorizes $5.5 billion in state bonds. Let's just borrow $5.5 billion payable by the state, payable by my taxes, for stem cell research and other medical research, including training, research facility construction, administrative costs. Dedicates $1.5 billion to brain-related diseases. Appropriates general fund monies for repayment. Expands related programs. Fiscal impact. Increased state costs to repay bonds, estimated at about $260 million of my money per year over the next roughly, and I quote, 30 years. This is what the conservatives talk about when they say small government. We can't do this. I'm not going to let you borrow $5.5 billion of my money. I'm for stem cell research. My grandfather there's a history of Alzheimer's in my family. I'm a fervent proponent of stem cell research, just medical research in general. But borrowing $5.5 billion payable by us is not the way to do it. I'm voting no on Measure 14. Find the money somewhere else. State Measure 15 increases funding sources for public schools, community colleges, and local government services by changing tax assessment of commercial and industrial property. Initiative constitutional amendment. Taxes such properties based on current market value instead of purchase price. So you know how when you go out to find a new apartment, they make you pay market value instead of what the guy before you was paying? Well, this is like that, except that money is not for the landlord, it's for public schools. So taxes such properties based on current market value instead of purchase price. Fiscal impact: increased property taxes on commercial properties worth more than $3 million, providing $6.5 billion to $11.5 billion in new funding just from those taxes to local governments and schools. This is the right way. Yes, this is the right way to fund your initiative. Yes on Measure 15. State Measure 16 allows diversity as a factor in public employment, education, and contracting decisions. Legislative constitutional amendment permits government decision-making policies to consider race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin. I'll say that again. Permits decision-making policies to consider race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin in order to address diversity by repealing constitutional provision prohibiting such policies, in other words, the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Fiscal impact: no direct fiscal effect on state, that means money, on state and local entities. The effects of the measure depend on the future choices of state and local government entities and are highly uncertain. So that means let us take in race, sexual orientation, country of origin, ethnicity, and I'm sure religion to factor in our decisions. No on Measure 16. People died for this. No on 16. I'm surprised this even got on the ballot. I'm surprised this many people signed up to get this on the ballot. Moving on. State Measure 17. Just to be clear, State Measure 16 is seeking to, and I quote, repeal, end quote, effectively, the Civil Rights Act of 1964. State Measure 17 restores right to vote after completion of prison term, legislative constitutional amendment. Restores voting rights upon completion of prison term to persons who have been disqualified from voting while serving a prison term. Fiscal impact, annual county costs likely in the hundreds of thousands of dollars statewide, very cheap. For voter registration and ballot materials, one-time state costs likely in the hundreds of thousands of dollars for voter registration cards and systems. I think this is a no-brainer. Once you've repaid your debt to society, why are we forcing you to keep paying it by not allowing you to vote? Let's let these people who have paid their debt to society vote. Let's restore their right to vote. Yes on Measure 17. State Measure 18 amends California Constitution to permit 17-year-olds to vote in primary and special elections if they will turn 18 by the next general election and be otherwise eligible to vote. Legislative constitutional amendment. Fiscal impact, increase statewide county costs slightly between several hundreds of thousands of dollars and $1 million every 2 years. Increase one-time cost to the state of hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think this is reasonable. They're going to be 18 by the time the next general election comes around. People being it's like in school when, you know, certain seniors are 17 or 18. I think the more minds we have working on the issue, I think the earlier you get civic engagement, the healthier our democracy will be. And it's not like you're asking a 12-year-old to vote. You know, what's the difference between a 17-year-old and an 18-year-old intellectually? So a lot of these kids with bachelor's degrees act like 17-year-olds anyway. So I'm voting yes on Measure 18. I want to see a little bit more awareness of where you are, in schools in general. So yes on 18. State Measure 19 changes certain property tax rules. Legislative constitutional amendment allows homeowners who are over 55, disabled, or wildfire disaster victims to transfer primary residence's tax base to replacement residence. Changes taxation of family property transfers. Establishes fire protection services fund. Fiscal impact. Local governments could gain tens of millions of dollars of property tax revenue per year, probably growing over time to a few $100 million per year. Schools could receive similar property tax gains. I think this is a common sense measure. People that are over 55, disabled, wildfire disaster victims. The government takes care of these people. People who are over 55 and their homeowners, they'll be fine. You know, it's not like the dialysis treatment later on in this, which we'll get to. You know, I think this is a harmless measure that is going to raise hundreds of millions of dollars a year over time for schools and for local governments, just in local governments. So I think this makes sense. Yes on Measure 19. State Measure 20 restricts parole for certain offenses currently considered to be nonviolent. I had to do a little bit of research on this. This is the other measure I was talking about where they just lump a bunch of stuff in, and it's not okay. Currently considered to be, restricts parole for certain offenses currently considered to be nonviolent. Authorizes felony sentences for certain offenses currently treated only as misdemeanors. This is not going to be popular. I'm gonna keep reading. Initiative statute limits access to parole program established for nonviolent offenders who have completed the full term of their primary offense by eliminating eligibility for certain offenses. Fiscal, I'm gonna get into it. Fiscal impact: increase in state and local correctional, court, and law enforcement costs. Cue the Benevolence Association. Likely in the tens of millions of dollars annually, depending on implementation. So depending on which one of our boys you get in there, that's how much it's going to cost you. So This restricts parole for non-violent offenses. On top of that, it upgrades to a felony offenses that are currently treated as misdemeanors, notably petty theft, which is upgraded from now you need to steal in excess of $1,000 in property or cash for it to be a felony. That comes down, according to State Measure 20, to $250. This reads like a bad apple law enforcement measure. Somehow they use their connections in politics to get this, pardon my French, shitty ass measure on this ballot. No on Measure 20 in 2020, baby. Let's keep going. State Measure, eyes on the prize, the horizon, the future. State Measure 21. Let's see what this says. Expands local government's authority to enact rent control on residential property. Initiative statute. I'm a fan of rent control. That's a topic for another video. Allows local governments to establish rent control on residential properties over 15 years old. Local limits on rate increases may differ from statewide limit. So they don't tell you exactly how much. It's up to the states and the localities. Fiscal impact. Overall, a potential reduction in state and local revenues in the high tens of millions of dollars per year over time. Depending on actions by local communities, revenue losses could be less or more. Overall, I'm a fan of rent control. This only applies to residential properties over 15 years old. So if you have a new building, that's at market value. Up to 15 years, that's market value. I think this is a pretty common sense measure. It just allows you to establish rent control. It does not mandate rent control, which is important. It's a case-by-case basis. In other words, it's not a mandate on rent control. So this is not big government. This is just flexibility. This is protection against vested interests. So this protects the renter. This protects that most of us are renters. Most of us that live in apartments do not own the apartment. We rent the apartment. So this protects people that live in apartments, which is a large number of the population of Los Angeles, at least, not to mention the state. I'm sure is not so different. So this curbs the fiscal authority of landlords. This protects against landlord abuse. I'm voting yes on Measure 21. State Measure 22 exempts. This is the Lyft bill, the Uber bill. I was a Lyft driver. I'm gonna break this down for you. Exempts app-based transportation and delivery companies from providing employee benefits to certain drivers. Initiative statute. Classifies app-based drivers as independent contractors instead of employees, and provides independent contractor drivers other compensation unless certain criteria are met. Fiscal impact, minor increase in state income taxes paid by rideshare and delivery company drivers and investors. Upon saying yes to the bill, I'm voting no on the bill, and this is why. I understand that being classified as an independent contractor in the current landscape allows you a larger freedom, a larger flexibility in your schedule. However, it is the responsibility of your employer to establish a flexible schedule. That it is not the responsibility of the employee or the contractor. It is the responsibility of the entity providing the work. So I understand in the short term, you need the flexibility, but in the long term, you need the protection. Independent contracting, they want to offer you health benefits, which means, buy our health. They don't even pay for your tires. You think they're going to pay for your health insurance? So I'm pro business regulation, because if they could get away with paying you pennies on the dollar, they would. Okay? That's their job. That's their job. Their job is to cut costs as much as possible, no matter what the expense is. Okay? That's called running a business. I'm not going to argue that. What I'm going to argue is the well-being of the drivers. And as an ex-Lyft driver myself, I can show you my 1,000 Ride Club jacket. I'm voting no on this measure because workers need protection, and independent contracting, ask any actor in this city. Independent contracting does not protect our interests. No on Measure 22. As citizens of the city of Los Angeles, you should know better than this. Media capital of the world, such a strong union city as this is, you should know better than this. No on Measure 22. Finally, the last page of the ballot. Page 5. State Measure 23 establishes state requirements for kidney dialysis clinics. I'm very pro-regulation when it comes to the health sector. Requires on-site medical professional. That means currently there is no requirement for having an on-site medical professional. Requires physician, nurse practitioner, or physician assistant on-site during dialysis treatment. That means this requirement is not in place already. This seems pretty common sense. I'll keep reading. Prohibits clinics from reducing services without state approval. Hold on. Prohibits clinics from refusing to treat patients based on payment source. So right now, clinics can refuse to give you dialysis treatment based on where the money comes from. Fiscal impact, increased state and local government costs likely in the low tens of millions of dollars annually. Not that expensive. I'm voting yes on Measure 23. We need to protect our health. This is pretty common sense. We need to protect our health. And for this one, I had to consult what is a very handy tool. The official California General Election Voter Information Guide. This is kind of the holy grail of policy, the policy of your ballot, and it provides background information on the measures, which is crucial. Let me just read you some of the stuff I found on here. Dialysis corporations want to protect their profits. In 2018, the California dialysis industry spent a record $110 million to defeat an initiative to improve conditions in dialysis clinics and protect patients from inflated billing. Why did they spend so much? To protect their massive $468 million in profits in California in 2018. To patients, dialysis is life-saving, but to industry executives, it's a huge moneymaker. So they're at it again, stoking fear by threatening to close clinics, which is one of the arguments against the proposition, which is that if you vote yes, that we'll be forced to close clinics because of money issues that have nothing to do with the health of the patients. Stoking fear by threatening to close clinics if Prop 23 passes and they're held accountable to higher standards. Once again, which should be astronomical. The health standards should be astronomical. Once again, they're using gravely ill dialysis patients to shield their perks and million-dollar salaries. They claim falsely that the initiative will cost them huge sums of money based on a highly dubious study that they paid for. They claim doctors are against it, but many of those doctors are on their payroll. In fact, I haven't seen any doctors go against it. I've only seen a nurses association, which could be anybody, which, you know, an association just means, hey, you and me. That's all that means. Not the union, not the nurses union. Some nurses association. But many of those doctors are on their payroll. They say it'll cause doctor shortages and overcrowded emergency rooms, but kidney doctors do not staff ERs. So this is kind of being labeled a money issue when it's really a medical issue. I'm voting yes on Measure 23. Consult your voter information guide. This is gold in here. State Measure 24, the Andrew Yang bill, very important. This needs to be on the national. We need to put this in the Constitution, or something similar. Amends consumer privacy. Well, we need to put this in national code. In other words, amends consumer privacy laws. Initiative statute permits consumers to prevent businesses from sharing personal information, all the stuff online, correct inaccurate personal information, and limit businesses' use of sensitive personal information, including precise geolocation, race, ethnicity, and health information. All the stuff these businesses are selling, they're selling your health records without your permission. This cuts that out. Establishes California Privacy Protection Agency. Ooh, I like that. Fiscal impact. Increase annual state costs of at least $10 million, but unlikely exceeding low tens of millions of dollars. Very cheap to enforce expanded, you know, in the scheme of things, to enforce expanded consumer privacy laws. You need to get on this. You really don't have a choice on this, because they're just going to abuse and throw you away like they already do. Facebook sells your stuff, everybody sells your stuff without your permission, and they make billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars, and then they lobby Congress with that money against you. Some costs will be offset by penalties for violating these laws. Yes on Measure 24, no brainer, folks. Don't think twice about this. State Measure 25, referendum on law that replaced money bail with system based on public safety and flight risk. This is the Kamala Harris bill. This is worded in a very Kamala Harris way. You'll see what I mean. This is why I don't trust that. I don't trust that lady. As a black man, listen to this. A yes vote approves and a no vote rejects law replacing money bail with system based on public safety and flight risk. Fiscal impact. Increased costs possibly in mid-hundreds. They couldn't have just said yes for money bail, no for no money bail. Increased costs possibly in... No. They said a yes vote approves and a no vote rejects law replacing money bail with system based on public... It's confusing on purpose. Increased cost possibly in mid-hundreds of millions of dollars annually for a new process for release from jail prior to trial. Decreased county jail costs possibly in high tens of millions of dollars annually. So instead of money bail, it's a system based on public safety and flight risk. So they will let you out of jail awaiting trial, not based on how much money you have, but based on how dangerous you are. I think that's pretty common sense. This is what Kamala Harris was talking about, the repealing basically money bail, the money bail system, which I'm for. I vote yes on Measure 25. I think that's pretty common sense also. But the way this is worded is indicative, I think, of the Kamala Harris school. And speaking of Kamala Harris, that brings me to the last and final item on this ballot, the national election, president and vice president, party-nominated offices. And this is the overall issue. The power of the political party versus the people. Party-nominated offices, the party label accompanying the name of a candidate for party-nominated office on the general election ballot means that the candidate is the official nominee of the party shown. Folks, we need to move away from a party system. Why do I have to vote for the entire party? Why can I not just vote for the idea? Why can I not just vote for the person? Why do I have to vote for all the interests of the specific party? God knows what they are. So all of these are either socialists or just kind of crazy. I mean, I looked into the libertarians first. Joe Jorgensen looks crazy. I'm not going to vote for president for somebody who doesn't seem to be taking themselves that seriously. The Green Party, the Peace and Freedom Party, the Green Party and the Peace and Freedom Party are openly, aggressively socialist. I am not a socialist. Americans are not socialists, typically. Socialism, I'm Cuban, okay? I know what socialism means. It is not what you think it means. All these people that are anti-capitalist, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You don't even know. Do you even know what socialism? What is socialism? Define socialism for me. You don't know what to you socialism means like the government pays for like my COVID test. That's not socialism. Socialism is the government owns McDonald's. I am not a socialist. I'm not going to vote for the Green Party and the Peace and Freedom Party for that reason. They are openly socialist. Joe Jorgensen of the Libertarians seems a little crazy, and this is how seriously they're taking themselves. On their ballot, they put the nickname of their candidate, which happens to be Spike, in quotation marks. I'm definitely not taking that seriously. I'm not voting for Donald Trump, and my only other option is Joseph Biden and Kamala Harris, who I guess this is where we're gonna get into. I'm gonna get into why I'm not voting specifically for Joseph Biden and Kamala Harris in another video. But as it relates to the election, I'm gonna tell you that they don't represent me. They are centrists. They are duplicitous. They say one thing and do another. Joe Biden is an establishment Democrat. He's been in there for 47 years, and all he's done is put people in prison that look like me. Kamala Harris, I mean, I'm gonna do a whole separate video on them, but essentially my reason for not voting for them is that they don't represent me. I don't vote for people that don't represent me. I don't see eye to eye to them with them. I think we can take care of the issues in other ways without giving them the job. That's the very specific job that it is to be president and vice president of the United States. We need to move away in general from solving all of our problems with one guy. Solving all of our problems with president and with president. That's kind of the ethos of this country, and that needs to change. That's why you have all these people not wanting to go third party, not wanting to broaden their horizons, because it's this left versus right. You're either red or you're blue. There's no critical thought in this country. That's a whole other issue. But I'm not voting for Joe Biden because he doesn't represent me. I don't care about his solution to the problems of this country is, I'm going to lower the taxes on the middle class. Andrew Yang works for him now. I was this close to voting for him for that reason alone. The fact that Andrew Yang is now on his payroll. But too little, too late. 2 weeks in. He gave him a job 2 weeks out from the election. He just doesn't. He's 47 years. He's the definition of status quo. You're gonna vote for a guy that's been in office for 47 years and expect him to change something for you? You have to use your head a little bit more. So for that reason, I am writing in Crispus Attucks for president. of the United States. He should be on the $1 bill, but we'll get to that. AmericanKingPress.com.